People can be cruel. Some are even very wicked to those they claim to love. Imagine what this husband did to his wife. Mr. Paul brought out a filthy underwear claiming it belongs to his wife in front of friends just to humiliate the innocent woman. Why would he do such a thing? You must be wondering. Try not to imagine it any further as we tell you how the whole story began. But first, subscribe to this channel. Your support really means a lot to us. Do not forget to like this video and share with friends so they too would watch and learn. The evening was filled with warmth and laughter as friends gathered in the lavish dining hall of an exotic restaurant. The air was rich with the scent of roasted chicken, red wine, and the faint perfume of the women seated on the plush velvet couches. Golden lights glowed from the chandelier above, reflecting on the crystal glasses raised in constant toasts. Everyone seemed to agree on one thing that night. Lisa and Paul were the perfect couple. "Honestly, I envy you both," said Clara, one of their closest friends, leaning back with a mischievous smile as she sipped her drink. 8 months into marriage, and you still look like newlyweds who just eloped yesterday." The group erupted in laughter, and Paul reached over, brushing a stray lock of hair from Lisa's face. "Well," he said with a teasing grin, "it's not our fault we still like each other." Lisa giggled, resting her head on his shoulder. "You mean love each other," she corrected softly, and the room broke into a playful cheer. "Oh, stop it, you two," cried Jasmine, mock-fanning herself. "You're making us single people choke on our drinks with all this sweetness." The laughter continued, but even through the jokes, there was something in the way their friends looked at them. A glimmer of envy, admiration, and perhaps disbelief. Paul had his arm around Lisa the entire evening, whispering little jokes into her ear that made her laugh uncontrollably. Every so often, he'd lean close, stealing kisses that made their friends groan and yell, "Get a room already!" As the night grew older and the laughter mellowed into soft chatter, Lisa stood up, tugging gently at Paul's hand. "We really have to go," she announced with a shy smile. "What? Already?" shouted Raymond, half drunk, holding his glass like it was part of his hand. "You guys always vanish just when things get interesting."
"Yeah," added Clara. "Ever since you two got married, it's impossible to hang out with you for a reasonable amount of time. You disappear faster than a politician after elections." Lisa laughed, helping Paul to his feet. "You know how it is," she teased. "Marriage is a full-time job." Paul chuckled. "Exactly. And right now, I've got overtime." The group booed and laughed loudly, throwing crumbs of chips and napkins at them as they walked out. Lisa and Paul exited still laughing, holding hands like teenagers sneaking away from the party. Their car ride home was filled with quiet giggles and teasing remarks about their friends. Once home, Paul poured her a glass of red wine, and they talked late into the night about nothing and everything, about dreams, vacations, how many kids they might have, and which of their friends would make the worst babysitter. Life between them was smooth, almost too smooth. They cared for each other in ways that felt effortless. Paul always remembered the little things, the way Lisa liked her tea, the shows she never wanted to miss, the tiny notes he left in her handbag before work. Lisa, in return, made their home a place of warmth. Their laughter filled the rooms, their love radiated in small acts, and to anyone watching from outside, they were a model couple. But life has a way of testing what seems unbreakable. Lisa often went out for brunch with her circle of girlfriends. They were women of all types, chatty, opinionated, some married, some divorced, others proudly single. The restaurant they frequented was a cozy spot with wicker chairs and live music. It was during one of these meetups that the tone among them began to change. "Lisa," Jasmine said one afternoon, swirling her straw lazily in her cocktail, "I just hope Paul stays the way he is. Men these days? You can't trust them as far as you can throw them." Lisa laughed, shaking her head. "You're wrong about Paul. He's different. He's gentle, open, and transparent. He tells me everything." Clara laughed in disbelief. "Everything? Please! You mean everything he wants you to know. My dear, men have a whole world we never see." "Maybe yours do," Lisa replied calmly, smiling, "but Paul isn't like that." The women exchanged glances. That look women give each other when they think their friend is being naive, but they're too polite to say it outright. The conversation moved on to other topics: fashion, workplace drama, travel, but the air had shifted. Over the next few months, Lisa began to notice that every time she spoke highly of her husband, her friends would respond with smirks or raised brows. Once, when she mentioned that Paul had started cooking dinner on Fridays, Annabelle had laughed and said, "Oh, honey, that's not cooking. That's guilt management." Lisa laughed it off, but the words lingered faintly at the back of her mind. Still, her marriage continued to blossom. Paul remained sweet, attentive, and sometimes ridiculously romantic. He'd plan surprise date nights, buy her flowers for no reason, and once even decorated their bedroom with candles just to tell her how lucky he felt to have her. But one day, everything changed. It was on another bright Saturday when Lisa and her friends met at their favorite cafe. They were halfway through brunch when Annabelle, who had been unusually quiet all morning, cleared her throat. "I need to say something," she began, her voice deliberate and her eyes sharp. The table fell silent. Lisa looked up, slightly uneasy. "What is it?" Annabelle hesitated, glancing at the others as if to gather courage. "Lisa," she said finally, "I saw Paul." Lisa blinked. "You saw Paul? Where?" "At a hotel," Annabelle said bluntly. "Last Thursday, around 6 p.m. The others gasped softly. Clara's eyes widened, Jasmine's jaw dropped, and Lisa's face froze. Annabelle continued. "He wasn't alone. There was a lady with him, tall, pretty, dressed a bit too, you know." She gestured vaguely with her hand. "They walked in together. I was at the reception area. I'm not saying he was doing anything wrong, but—" Lisa burst into laughter, a little too loud. "Oh, come on, Annabelle. Paul at a hotel? Maybe he was there for a business meeting or helping someone. You know he handles hotel logistics sometimes." "Sweetheart," Annabelle said softly, "I know what I saw. They looked close." Lisa's laughter faded. She sipped her drink, trying to stay composed. "Paul would never cheat. Never. You must have seen someone else." The silence of the table thickened. Her friends exchanged glances again, pitying this time, not mocking. Clara reached out and touched Lisa's hand. "We're not trying to hurt you, Lisa. We just don't want you to be blindsided." Lisa looked around the table, her jaw tightening. "Thank you, but I trust my husband. He's never given me a reason not to." Jasmine sighed. "That's exactly what they all say." Lisa forced a smile, determined to keep her composure. Then maybe I'm one of the lucky ones who's right. But inside her heart, a strange unease began to form. Quiet, small, like a whisper in a dark room. She didn't show it, but it followed her all the way home. That night, when Paul wrapped his arms around her in bed, asking softly, "How was your outing?" she smiled and replied, "It was fine." Her tone was calm, but her mind wasn't. As Paul drifted to sleep beside her, breathing softly, Lisa stared at the ceiling. Remembering Annabelle's eyes, the certainty in her voice, and the image she had painted of her husband at a hotel with another woman. And for the first time in 8 months of perfect love, she felt something she had never felt before. Doubt. The next morning arrived with a quiet chill, even though the sun had already begun to warm the skies. Lisa had woken up early, prepared breakfast, and was humming softly as she set the table. She was determined to push away the shadow of Annabelle's words from her mind. Paul came down dressed neatly for work, kissed her forehead, and they exchanged their usual laughter and flirtations before he left for the office. Everything felt normal again, or at least she wanted it to. A few hours later, as Lisa sat on the couch flipping through a magazine, her phone began to ring. She smiled when she saw the caller ID, Dad. It had been a while since they had spoken. She picked up the call eagerly.
"Daddy," she said with a cheerful tone, "you remembered me today." Her father's voice came through calm, but serious, the way it always did when he had something on his mind. "Lisa," he said slowly, "how are you and that husband of yours?" Lisa smiled faintly. "We're doing great, Daddy. Ball is at work. I'm just home relaxing." There was a brief pause on the line, then her father sighed deeply. "Lisa, I want to remind you of something. Do you remember what I told you before you married Paul?" She hesitated, lowering the magazine onto her lap. "You told me you didn't think he was right for me," she said quietly. "That's right. And I said it not because I didn't like him, but because I observed him. There's something about that man that's not steady. I've seen men like him before, charming, well-spoken, respectful on the surface, but slippery underneath." Lisa frowned slightly. "Daddy, please don't start. Paul has been good to me. He's caring, loyal, everything I prayed for." Her father's tone deepened. "I'm hearing things, Lisa, things that worry me." "What kind of things?" she asked, her voice dropping. "I've been hearing rumors," he said, his words measured. "People in town have been talking. They've seen Paul in places a married man shouldn't be, in clubs, parties, even in compromising states with other women." Lisa froze for a moment, her heart racing. "Rumors? Who told you that?" "I won't call names," Zuka replied firmly. "But Lisa, when the same thing is said by different people, you must not ignore it. You know I warned you from the start. That young man, I don't trust him." Lisa tried to laugh, but it came out uneasy. "Daddy, people gossip all the time. Maybe they saw someone that looks like Paul. You know how these towns are. One person says something, and before long it becomes a story." Her father's tone sharpened. "Lisa, listen to me. Don't be blinded by love. I'm not saying you should accuse him, but at least talk to him. Find out what's really going on." Lisa leaned back on the couch, sighing softly. "Daddy, I know my husband. Paul cannot cheat on me. He's not that kind of man." Zuka paused, his voice softening slightly. "I only hope you're right, my daughter. But love doesn't make a man faithful. Character does." Lisa smiled faintly, though her heart felt heavier. "Thank you, Daddy. I'll be fine." They ended the call, and Lisa sat still for several minutes afterward, staring blankly into the air. The words of her father joined the whispers of her friends in her mind, circling around like echoes she couldn't escape. But she refused to believe them. Paul was hers, her best friend, her love, her gentle soul. There had to be another explanation for all these stories. Days passed quietly until that sunny afternoon that would change everything. The sky was bright, the birds sang cheerfully, and Lisa was folding laundry when her phone rang again. The voice on the other end was shaky, hurried, almost breathless. "Lisa," the caller said quickly, "I just saw Paul." Lisa frowned, a little confused. "Paul? At work?" "No, at a hotel. He just walked in with a young lady." "I'm not mistaken. I saw him clearly." Lisa's heart jumped into her throat. "Are you sure?" she asked, standing abruptly. "Lisa, I know your husband when I see him. He was wearing that gray suit he likes. The lady was tall, wearing a red dress. They went in together." Lisa took a deep breath, forcing calm into her voice. "Thank you. I'll handle it." She hung up, her hands trembling slightly, but her face remained composed. She sat still for a moment before grabbing her phone again and dialing Paul's number. He picked up on the first ring, his voice smooth, confident, and unsuspecting. "Hey, sweetheart. How's your day going?" Lisa hesitated, forcing a smile through her tone. "Hi, love. I just wanted to check on you. Where are you?" "I'm in my office."
Why do you ask? Her heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. Nothing serious. I just wanted to hear from you and know how your day's been. Paul chuckled. Oh, that's sweet. Day's been busy, but hearing your voice just made it better. Lisa smiled faintly. All right then, I'll let you work. Don't forget to eat, okay? Of course not, he laughed softly. I love you. I love you too, she said quietly, and ended the call. Within the next 10 minutes, Lisa was already in her car, driving straight toward Paul's office. Her heart beat wildly, but she told herself she wasn't going there to spy. She was just going to prove to herself that her father and friends were wrong. When she arrived, Paul's car was parked neatly outside his office. She entered quietly and found him seated behind his desk, dressed in his usual work shirt, reviewing some documents. He looked up with a warm smile the moment she saw him. "Lisa!" he exclaimed, standing. "What a surprise! What are you doing here?" Lisa smiled and held up a small food flask. "I thought you might be hungry, so I brought you lunch." Paul grinned. "You're too sweet," he said, walking around the desk to hug her. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to. I just missed you." He kissed her forehead. "You're the best wife anyone could ask for." She placed the flask on the table and smiled. "Eat it before it gets cold." "I will," he said softly, holding her hand for a moment before she turned to leave. Outside, Lisa exhaled deeply, feeling relieved. He's innocent, she told herself. He's right where he said he was. But unknown to her, moments before she arrived, Paul had been in that very hotel the caller mentioned. The moment he saw Lisa's name flash on his phone, his heart had raced. He had excused himself from the young lady, rushed out of the hotel, and driven back to his office in record time, his tie still half loosened, his breath unsteady. By the time Lisa walked in, he had managed to fix his collar, splash water on his face, and look the part of the calm, hard-working husband. That evening, when Lisa got home, she called back the person who had informed her earlier. "I went to Paul's office," Lisa said confidently. "He was there, working. You must have made a mistake." The caller sounded confused. "Lisa, I swear I saw him at that hotel. He even held the girl's hand. I couldn't have mistaken him." Lisa's voice rose slightly. "Do you hear yourself? My husband was in his office when I got there. Maybe you saw someone that looks like him. People love drama too much these days." "But Lisa—" "No buts," she interrupted. "Please, next time don't call me with lies about my husband." She ended the call and threw the phone onto the couch. Her chest heaved as she tried to calm herself. "They're all wrong," she whispered. "Paul would never lie to me." But deep down, in the quiet corner of her mind she dared not acknowledge, a faint doubt began to bloom again, small but persistent, whispering questions she wasn't ready to answer. That Saturday afternoon was bright and windy, the kind of day that made the neighborhood shimmer with life. Lisa had gone to the market, her woven basket filled with fresh vegetables, yams, and ripe plantains. She wore a soft blue dress and sandals, humming quietly to herself as she made her way toward the car parked by the roadside. The streets were alive with the chatter of traders and the rhythmic calls of sellers announcing their wares. Just as Lisa crossed the final stall, she spotted a familiar face across the street. "Rita!" she called cheerfully. Her friend Rita turned, smiled brightly, and waved back. But just as Rita was about to cross the road to meet her, her eyes shifted, and in that instant, she froze. Just a few meters away, across the busy street, Paul stood beside his car. He was leaning casually against the door, one arm wrapped comfortably around the waist of a young woman. She was slim, fair-skinned, and dressed in a tight floral gown that left little to imagination. They were laughing like people with shared secrets. Then it happened. Paul looked up, and for a moment his eyes met Rita's. Then, like a guilty man caught in a spotlight, his face stiffened. And before Rita could even blink, he yanked open his car door, pushed the lady inside, and drove off so quickly that the dust followed his tires like smoke. Rita's mouth hung open. Her heart thumped. That was Paul. There was no mistake about it. Lisa, still on the opposite side of the road, hadn't noticed any of it. She smiled and crossed over, clutching her basket, her face glowing with the innocent happiness of a woman whose world was still perfect.
"Rita!" she said joyfully, hugging her friend. "It's been ages! You look amazing!" Rita forced a smile, her eyes still darting in the direction where Paul had driven off. "Lisa! Hi! You look good too," she managed to say, her voice trembling slightly. They exchanged a few pleasantries, laughing lightly, but Rita's mind was somewhere else. She couldn't stop thinking about what she just saw. The image of Paul's arm around that young lady wouldn't leave her head. Then, without thinking, she blurted, "Lisa, I thought you were here with Paul." "Paul? No, he's at work. Why?" Rita hesitated, realizing her mistake. "It's just that I thought I saw him a moment ago. He just drove off with someone." The smile slowly faded from Lisa's face. Her cheerful glow turned pale. "You saw Paul?" she asked, her voice quiet but sharp. Rita immediately regretted saying it. "Oh no, Lisa, don't mind me. Maybe it wasn't him. I didn't see clearly. My eyes—" Lisa looked down for a moment, her fingers tightening around the market basket. Her chest felt heavy, though she tried to keep her face steady. Seeing her reaction, Rita quickly apologized. "Please, Lisa, forget what I said. Come, let's go home together. Maybe I'm mistaken." Lisa forced a weak smile. "No, it's okay," she said softly. "Let's go." When they got home, Rita insisted on staying with her, sensing that Lisa's silence meant she was deeply unsettled. Soon, two of Lisa's other friends, Jasmine and Annabelle, were called over, and they all gathered in the living room, trying to lift Lisa's mood. They brought out juice, snacks, and turned on some music. They began chatting, laughing about silly things, and telling stories about their past dates. Slowly, Lisa began to laugh again, though her laughter was softer, her eyes distant. She didn't want to believe what Rita said. As they talked, the sound of a car engine rolled into the compound. Paul. He parked outside and sat in the car for a few seconds, peering through the window at the laughter spilling from the living room. He could hear their voices, his wife among them, mixed with giggles and feminine chatter. He clenched his jaw. "I know they're already talking about me," he muttered under his breath, staring at the steering wheel. "I know those her friends must be filling her head with nonsense, but I'll show them I'm the man in this house." He glanced around, then noticed something odd by the gate, a piece of dirty female underwear lying in the dust, probably dropped by someone passing by. He stared at it for a moment, then a wicked idea slithered through his mind. He looked back at the house, smirked, and said quietly to himself, "This will teach them a lesson. Let them laugh at me now." He got out of the car, picked up the tattered underwear using 2 fingers, and sneaked into the house through the back door and waited for the right moment. The women were still laughing when he suddenly appeared in the doorway. The laughter stopped instantly. "Paul!" Lisa exclaimed, standing up quickly. "You're back!" But Paul's expression was dark, angry, and theatrical. He lifted his hand high, holding the piece of dirty underwear between his fingers like a piece of evidence. "Lisa!" he barked loudly, startling everyone. "Why are you still wearing this kind of thing in my house? How can a grown woman, my wife, wear such filthy underwear? This is disgusting!" The room went dead silent. The shock on Lisa's face was indescribable. Her friends' mouths dropped open, speechless. Rita gasped. Jasmine covered her mouth. Annabelle blinked twice, unsure if she was dreaming.
Lisa stood frozen, her hands trembling.
Her face turned red with shame and confusion. "Paul, what are you talking about?" she whispered. Paul threw the underwear on the floor in front of her. "Don't play innocent. I found this in the compound. You think you're clean? This is the nonsense you wear around?" "Paul!" shouted Jasmine, unable to hold herself anymore. "How could you say such a thing in front of us? Even if it were true, you shouldn't humiliate your wife like this." Rita shook her head in disbelief. "This is too much, Paul. This isn't how a man behaves." But Paul ignored them, pointing at Lisa, his face full of mock disgust. "You all sit here laughing at me while my wife wears rags underneath, and you expect me not to talk?" Lisa finally found her voice, trembling but strong. "Paul, that underwear is not mine! You know me! You know I can't have such dirty underwear!" Paul looked away dramatically and hissed, "Please, spare me the lies." Then he turned and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. For a moment the room was utterly silent. Then Rita sighed deeply. "Lisa, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have even told you what I saw today." Lisa stood still, staring at the floor where the tattered underwear lay. Tears welled in her eyes. Her friends tried to comfort her, but they couldn't hide the confusion and disappointment in their faces. Jasmine finally said, "Lisa, maybe he's just angry. Don't take it to heart." They stayed a little longer, talking quietly until evening, then each left one after the other. But deep down, none of them could shake off the image of Paul's dramatic outburst. And though they didn't say it out loud, some of them wondered, could Paul's cheating be because Lisa wasn't the woman he expected her to be? When everyone was gone, Lisa sat alone in the dark living room, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her heart felt like a heavy stone. She remembered her father's voice, the firmness, the warning in his tone when she had first told him she wanted to marry Paul. "Lisa," he had said back then, "that man's eyes move too fast. He's not steady. He'll make you cry." But she hadn't listened. Love had blinded her. Now she sat on the couch, broken, whispering to herself through tears, "Why, Paul? Why would you humiliate me like that? What did I do?" She didn't know that Paul's stunt was nothing but a desperate cover-up, an attempt to distract her from the truth of his unfaithfulness. She pondered on how such filthy underwear could emerge to be hers without her knowledge. Where could Paul have gotten such underwear, she asked herself. The underwear wasn't hers, but one Paul had picked from the dirty roadside and turned into a cruel weapon to protect his lies. And as the night deepened, Lisa cried quietly, alone, unaware that the worst of Paul's secrets were still yet to unfold. If you were Lisa's friend or relative, what would you suggest that Lisa do? Watch out for the concluding part of this story. If you haven't subscribed, do so now and like this video so you don't miss the concluding part of the story. Thank you for watching.